Brazil's folklore is a multifaceted stew of European, African, and Native American influence, seasoned with dark, exotic spices that are interchangeable between each of its 5 regions' tastes. Brazilian territory is comprised of 8.5 million square kilometers of land, which, as said, is divided into 5 regions that have vastly different climate and vegetation. We have the Amazon forest in the north, dunes in the northeast, the Pantanal in central west, mountainous landscapes in the southeast, and lowlands in the south. As every region is unique, so are their cultures and experiences, including their myths and legends. Today, I'll be covering 8 wicked Brazilian legends so strange they managed to break the boundaries of localization, becoming known all over the country. The headless mule, or mula sem cabeça, has a backstory that is both tragic and misogynistic. While the term headless mule wasn't coined until the 1940s, its tale is deeply linked to medieval Catholic beliefs. A cursed woman is transformed into a headless, fiery mule by God due to a grave sin, often committing adultery with a priest. In this time period, Catholic priests had to live without having sexual relations, so naturally, it was the woman's fault in every instance. According to legend, the first woman to, quote, commit this sin was transformed into a mule that had a roaring fire coming out of her neck and tail. She ran around the city destroying everything in front of her and killing anyone that crossed her way. From this point, any and every woman who had sexual relations with a priest would become a new headless mule and be condemned to wreak havoc across their respective cities and towns. During this rampage, the mule is condemned to gallop over the territory of 7 parishes each night, having the trip begin and end at the parish where the sin was committed. The following mornings, they would become women again and suffer severe pain throughout their entire body. There are a couple of ways to remove God's punishment and, quote, save a headless mule. The easiest way involves simply getting some of her blood. The transformation can be reversed temporarily by spilling the mule's blood with a prick of a needle or by tying her to a cross. Another way is by removing her reins, which is virtually impossible for she has fire coming out of her neck. After doing this, the woman would be taken to a church and a priest would curse her 7 times. This way, she wouldn't turn into the headless mule ever again. A person who encounters the mule should not cross her path, or the mule will follow the offender and trample them down. Instead, one should either be brave enough to remove the bridle or spill her blood, or else just lie face down on the ground, covering teeth and nails, as well as anything that shines, and the mule, due to its poor vision, will hopefully fail to notice the stranger's presence and trot away. The tale is most popular in the states of Goiás, Minas Gerais, São Paulo, Paraná, and Mato Grosso, but is well known throughout the country. The mule's appearance varies greatly from region to region. However, its color is most commonly described as brown or black, with intense flames protruding from where its head is supposed to be, as well as other spots. It has either silver or iron horseshoes that produce a hideous trotting, louder than any horse is capable of producing. Despite being headless, the mule still neighs incredibly loudly, and sometimes you can hear the moans of a crying woman. It also has a bridle tied to its non-existent mouth, and spews fire through its non-existent nostrils, or in some versions, from its severed neck. There is also a similar, though much less known folk tale, where the curse fell on the sinning priest instead. In this story, the priest's headless ghost rides through the night on a normal horse, much like the headless horseman in Washington Irving's story, The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. From one instance of fire to another, the legend of the Boitata originates from Brazil's native Tupi people. The word means serpent of fire or fiery thing, depending on how you translate the old Tupi and Boitata. Anchieta describes it as a, quote, fiery thing in 1560, but today the Boitata is commonly portrayed as a fiery snake. According to the legend, there was once a long period of darkness when the sun did not shine, and the darkness flooded the earth. These conditions killed many animals, forced the beasts to flee their natural habitats. Among the displaced survivors was the boiguacu, a giant cave anaconda. Emerging from its lair, the boiguacu began to eat the eyes of the dead, which shone brightly in the darkness and made for tasty delicacies. As the snake ate more and more of these delicious shiny eyes, its body began to shine too, but the eye's only diet steadily weakened it, and it perished in a blaze of glory. For upon its death, all the light collected inside it escaped to the sun, and the dark days were finally over. From this, the Boitata lives on in spirit. It inhabits the Amazon jungles to this very day, often appearing at night as nothing but two glowing fiery eyes. Some say it can breathe fire as well, an ability it uses to incinerate people who harm the rainforest by chopping down trees or starting fires. Others say it can actually disguise itself as a tree trunk, then roast alive any lumberjack who comes to cut it down. It also has the capability to blind you and make you insane if you gaze into its eyes long enough. There are other versions of the legend that describe the Boitata as a giant fiery bull who hunts the hunters, and yet others that associate it with almas panadas, souls that are cursed for various reasons, from immorality to dealing dishonestly with the devil. Many descriptions of the Boitata legend connect it with ignis fatuus, or the fiery phenomenon known as will-o'-the-wisp, as covered in my previous videos about Scottish myths and legends. There is also some overlap between the legends of the Boitata and the Boyuna, an evil black snake that is said to take a variety of forms, attack and devour people, and use its flaming eyes to lead boats to their ruin. Traveling now to the river dunes along the northeast portion of Brazil, Caboclo de Agua is a monstrous-looking supernatural being known for tormenting fishermen and boatmen who cross his path along the Rio São Francisco. This river spans 1,800 miles and runs through the Brazilian states of Minas Gerais, Bahia, Pernambuco, Alagoas, and Sergipe. According to legend, he is a strong and frightening adult male with fish body parts and incredibly tough skin. With human-like features, he is far from a simple man, as he possesses superhuman capabilities such as strength and speed. The riverside people describe him as a stocky, muscular creature with tan skin, short stature, and with only one eye located in the middle of his forehead. Despite his physicality, the Caboclo de Agua can move incredibly quickly, often being able to instantaneously be in multiple places at once. When not scaring away the fish from poor fishermen's hooks and nets, he's attempting to flip their boats or run them aground. One account of the Caboclo states that he appeared to a fisherman as a horse floating dead in the river. When the fisherman reached the dead horse and attempted to use his net to fish it out of the water, the Caboclo came to life, immediately submerged, and proceeded to rock the fisherman's boat like a madman trying to wreck it. If its speed and superhuman abilities weren't enough cause for concern, he can also live outside of the water, coming up onto the banks of the Rio São Francisco River to torment more unsuspecting victims. The Caboclo may be temporarily placated by tossing some tobacco into the water, which is how the fisherman in the case of the quote dead horse escaped total loss of his boat. Preventive measures include painting a white star on, or attaching knives to the boat's hull, or carving scary figures upon its prow. He is said to live in a cave deep down at the bottom of the river, hoarding an incredible amount of gold, but it's practically impossible to get there for any human. Anyone who's ever tried to reach this cave has never come back to tell the story. Another river monster, the Boto Encantado, is an enchanted Amazon river dolphin. To some, this may sound charming or cute, but typically only to those who have never beheld one breach the waves right next to them. Botos are considered ugly, loud, and big enough to easily capsize small watercraft. It's clear, even before any enchantment takes place, why people believe making eye contact with one of these creatures leads to hellish nightmares. But the real story is their ability to shapeshift. In Brazilian folklore, Botos transform at night from ghastly fish to handsome men, and visit drinking holes and dance halls to seduce young women. The only part of their bodies that doesn't change, the blowhole, is always hidden underneath some kind of fashionable hat. In addition to a hat, the Boto is, or at least was traditionally, described as wearing a sword, a fine belt, and white shoes. However, it turns out that all of these items are themselves river creatures. The hat is a stingray, the sword is an electric eel, and the belt and shoes different kinds of fish. One tale of the Boto Encantado tells of two men who spent a night drinking and carousing in town, only to disappear at dawn. The next day, fishermen caught two botos and, while gutting them, found they smelled strongly of liquor. In another case, a man was suspected of being a Boto, chased to the river, and speared with 3 harpoons as he dived into the water. A dead Boto was later found in the vicinity with 3 harpoons protruding from its body. The legend of the Boto is often applied in cases of uncertain paternity. Kids with unknown fathers are simply the Filos de Boto, or the dolphin's children. The Saki is one of the most well-known Brazilian legends. It even has its own national holiday. October 31st is Dia de Saki, or Saki Day, established to direct attention away from the American Halloween tradition and toward Brazilian culture instead. He is a one-legged black man who smokes a pipe and wears a magical red cap that enables him to disappear and reappear wherever he wishes, usually in the middle of a dirt devil. Considered an annoying, mischievous prankster in most parts of Brazil, and a potentially dangerous and malicious creature in others, he nevertheless grants wishes to anyone who manages to trap him or steal his magic cap. There are many different accounts of the Saki's nature and powers, and each one has the same basic appearance. The Saki is responsible for minor infractions like spilling salt, burning food, scaring horses, and hiding toys. Thanks to his red hat, he can magically disappear or transform into a bird. There are many simple ways to counter a Saki's quote attacks. For example, if you find yourself bothered by a Saki, you can lay down a knotted rope. The Saki will have no choice but to stop and untie the knots, during which time you can escape his attention. It is also possible to shake a Saki by simply crossing a stream, as Sakis dislike water and will not cross it. In addition, if you manage to steal a Saki's hat, you will be granted a wish. Sakis are born inside bamboo stalks and take 7 years to gestate. After emerging from their weird womb, they live for exactly 77 years, then die and transform into poisonous mushrooms, or arelas de pau, which are ear-shaped fungi that grow on the sides of trees in the rainforest. Anytime you see a whirlwind, look out. There might be a Saki inside, just waiting to test your appreciation of Brazilian culture. Cabeça Satanica, also known as Cabeça Errante, is a disembodied head ghost of Brazilian folklore said to roam the darkest nights looking for victims. Given that it is only known based upon its European and Portuguese origin, it's next to impossible to indicate exactly the time when the legend first appeared. The most accepted version is that it arrived in the country through the colonizers, who landed in Recife, Pernambuco, but later it was spread through the areas of the Agreste, Hinterland, and High Hinterland, as a story handed down through generations across the capitals. Its physical description is varied according to which version you come across. Some describe it as the head of a person with long hair, moving by rolling or jumping on the ground, showing wide and frightening eyes, always with a big, enigmatic smile stamped on the face. Other versions describe it as the head of a cangaceiro, or a bandit of northeastern Brazil, with rough features, punished by adversity, which smiles at all who come across it. A third version represents it as a head led by another ghostly being, who with one hand holds it by the hair, but lets it go as soon as it faces someone, so that it can chase the victim, who, unfortunately, was in the wrong place at the wrong time. It usually appears suddenly, as if it were an ordinary person, almost always with its back to the individual it intends to intimidate. This typically occurs late at night, and in places where there is little light, certainly because darkness will increase the feeling of dread. Then that strange and unrecognizable person disappears on the ground in split seconds, appearing in its place the disembodied rolling head. It is an entity so feared by the inhabitants of remote regions that the mere mention of its name requires the sign of the cross, and they usually will avoid it at all costs, even when the conversation revolves around hauntings. That's because they associate his name with the living incarnation of the devil himself, who usually goes out at night to chase those who, for whatever reason, are roaming the streets, with or without destination. It is said that a single touch of this evil entity is enough for one to become incredibly sick, soon followed by death. It's considered a sign of omen when it runs through the night and suddenly stops in front of a particular house. In these cases, it's taken for granted that one of the people living there will end up dying or contracting a serious illness within a few days. So that this does not happen, a priest is typically called to exorcise the place, so that later the residents can perform a novena or prayer there. This is, in general certainty, the only way for the evil to be definitively removed. Papa Figo, also known as Homem de Saco or Velho de Saco, is an urban and popular legend known throughout all regions of Brazil, especially in rural areas. Parents often tell their children about the existence of Papa Figo to prevent them from talking to strangers. The Papa Figo is described as a ragged, hunchbacked, bearded old man who often roams the city streets with a large sack on his back, their intention being to capture disobedient children and eat their livers. Although in most cases he has a human appearance, in some versions he has immense nails and ears, and vampire teeth, all caused by a terrible, suffering disease. Legend has it that it is necessary for the Papa Figo to eat the livers of children, and that's why he gets his name, which is the contraction of Papa Figados, or liver eater in Portuguese. The ghastly being believes his illness will be cured if he feeds on the blood and liver of children. According to popular belief, the liver was the producer of blood, and the cure for the disease would be in the consumption of said healthy liver. Therefore, the liver of children, being purer, was what should be consumed by those who suffered from the disease. In some versions of the legend, Papa Figo has helpers who attract children and bring victims to him. In others, he himself captures the children, being nice to them and offering them sweets and toys. After eating his victim's liver, he usually leaves a sum of money beside the body for funeral expenses and to help the family. How nice. According to scholars on the subject, the disease associated with this character is often leprosy or Chagas disease, in which the liver swells immensely. Most likely, the legend of Papa Figo emerged in Brazil in the mid-20th century due to an outbreak of Chagas disease that occurred in the northeast. To contain the outbreak of the disease, workers from the Ministry of Health visited communities where people were affected most frequently. They performed necropsies on individuals who died, where the normal procedure was liver puncture. Thus, the lack of knowledge of the people of the community ended up creating the legend of Papa Figo. The lobisomem is a wolf-like creature usually considered a werewolf variation, but in some versions it is an abnormally large pig, dog, or some kind of hybrid between both. In Brazil, there are many versions of how you would become a lobisomem, varying according to the region. One version says that the seventh child in a sequence of same-sex children will become a lobisomem. Another version says that a boy born after a succession of 7 women is going to turn into a lobisomem every Friday night from his 13th birthday onward. In another one, it is said that the 8th child will become the wild beast regardless of the gender of their siblings. In versions where it does not depend on having siblings, it is after the death of a family member who was a lobisomem, and passed from father to son, from grandfather to grandson, and so on. And in some versions of the southern region, incest would also bring this fate. In some regions, instead of transforming during full moon, the lobisomem transforms at midnight on Friday at a crossroads. Once transformed, he goes out at night in search of blood, ferociously killing everything that moves, with a preference for unbaptized babies, which causes family members to baptize their children as soon as possible. Before dawn hits, he looks for the same crossroads to become a man again. During Lent, however, his transformations happen every day, and they become more aggressive, especially on Good Friday. The most notable difference from the traditional werewolf is that the Brazilian lobisomem does not become a wolf, but something usually described as a cross between a dog and a pig with red eyes. A black coat, long ears, a putrid odor, and front legs that are shorter than the back, as if they still retain their human proportions. Other stories tell of lobisomems resembling farm animals, sometimes explained as those who wallow at the crossroads he becomes. They must be donkeys, bulls, and sheep, but hybrids of all these animals are not unheard of either. The more different animals that are a part of the beast's appearance, the more powerful the lobisomem. It should be noted, however, that this is more restricted to traditional rural tales, and more modern urban myths have been highly influenced by European and Hollywood werewolves. In addition to the more obvious physical characteristics, such as a weak, pale, and often sickly appearance, having dark circles under his eyes and hoarse elbows due to the position in which he walks in his beast form, people know the lobisomem in human form through strange, sudden, and mysterious behaviors. The lobisomem in human form is a person very attentive to others, always suspicious of everything, being very afraid of being discovered that he is an aberration, but he is also very protective in human form. In general, it's believed that a lobisomem could be healed if he were seriously injured with certain objects. One of these objects was a bullet dipped in the wax of a candle from an altar, where 3 midnight masses or 3 Sunday masses had been celebrated. The legend of the lobisomem, like all Brazilian wicked legends covered, are well known across the country, and they are greatly feared by all who believe in them. As we've learned, Brazil is a melting pot of cultures, and many elements of Brazilian mythology are shared by the tradition of other countries, especially its South American neighbors and Portugal. There is no singular mythological doctrine in Brazil. Instead, there is a patchwork collection of stories and teachings from different cultural groups that each contribute unique stories, teachings, and figures to the various wicked legends Brazil has to offer.